Well, hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday to all of you. It's officially the top of the hour. It's 2 o'clock on the east and 12 noon here in the Mountain Time Zone where I am. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to talk about integrating Merlin with third-party applications today. Joining us on the call is Andrew Forber, our Chief Technology Officer at MerlinOne. So before we really get started, just as a reminder of our webinar guidelines, the rules of the road, we like to keep this short, sweet, and efficient. We'll try and keep it to about 30 minutes. We have a lot of stuff to cover today. I am recording the session, so thank you for reminding me, Randy. We'll do our short presentation. Please ask your questions in the webinar chat window. We'll try to answer those either as they come up or at the end of the session. Your questions don't have to be related to today's topic, so if you have another Merlin question, feel free to ask it. So let me introduce to you Andrew Forber. Andrew is going to be handling most of today's presentation. Andrew is our Chief Technology Officer. He's been with MerlinOne for over 22 years and has been doing work in electronic publishing for more than 34 years. So Andrew, thank you. Welcome to helping us with today's presentation. If you have anything else to say about yourself, please feel free and we'll walk through the slides together.
Very good. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about APIs, what an API is for brief background, and we'll talk about the ones that Merlin currently supports. An API, this is sometimes also called a web service or a service, and we implement a number of them in Merlin. An API is really a way for one program to talk to another program, sometimes on the same computer and often on different computers. And so this has always been a part of the architecture of Merlin. And we've always had ways for other programs to talk to Merlin using APIs. If we could go to the next slide, please. The simplest and most direct, if you have an on-premise Merlin, is to talk right to our database. That's something that a few customers have done in the past. We won't really be talking about that much today. It's no longer the preferred way of creating APIs. We instead provide more high-level interfaces for applications to control Merlin that don't require on particular database knowledge or technology and don't require the programs to be local to the Merlin system. So today we'll talk about web APIs. Next, please. First, talking about web APIs, you'll often hear the term REST being used, and REST is a design philosophy. It's actually the architectural philosophy that the entire World Wide Web is based on. The idea is that you post requests to a web server and you get data back again, and the data may contain links to other places that you can fetch the data from. So it's really the design approach of the World Wide Web. It became called REST in about 2000, and it's usually an HTTP protocol, though in theory you could use the same approach with other protocols like SMTP. One of the defining attributes of it is that the idea with REST is that it is stateless, which means that you do not have a session on a server that the server tracks. So it's a login-less kind of interaction with the server. You send it a URL, you get the results back, and other than perhaps caching on the server, there is no persistent data relating to you on the server that will help satisfy the next request.
So Andrew, so Merlin, some of the APIs that Merlin uses are considered RESTful APIs.
That's correct. We'll be talking about 3 APIs today. The first 2 are RESTful. OpenSearch is a simple API, a simple web service that allows you to search within Merlin. And it's a protocol that's also supported by many of the main search engines, as you see on your screen. you can actually have open search clients within web browsers in order to search a variety of data sources. Merlin's implementation of that is running on the Merlin web servers, and we have a number of customers who have used it to create RSS feeds or to integrate with their web servers for their corporate web servers in order to allow assets to be searched for from within a UI that has no other part of Merlin in it.
And we're going to show examples of that in a little bit.
Right. This it's simple. It's based on an authentication key that you give to it, and which authentication key you give it defines what you can search for and whether you get download links. It doesn't allow you to do anything to manipulate the contents of Merlin, however. It only lets you search.
Okay.
So next. And then, yes, here we say soda, not a soft drink. It stands for the Simple Object Delivery API. And SODA works with Merlin or with Merlin X to allow a web browser to download files securely. So it creates a strongly encrypted URL, which you would get from OpenSearch or from the Merlin X API, and then you can use that. You can decorate the URL in order to ask for cropping or rotation or to add comments to the publication or the usage history of the item. And then when you send the URL to the Merlin server, the file comes back again. People also use this, for example, to create temporary links to thumbnail files. You have the option of saying that this link will no longer work 30 days from now, and that protects the assets to a degree.
Okay, so we're going to jump out of our slide presentation briefly, and we're going to actually show you two live uses of these two APIs, and then we have another one that we're going to show you that we've done with a screenshot or two. So let me go here. And so what we're looking at right now is the Campgrounds of America press room. And so it's available on the public internet. Anybody could go there. You can see the URL at the top of the screen, koapressroom.com. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down a little bit as well. Andrew, can you talk to us a little bit about how Merlin is involved in this particular page and what's happened
Sure.
here? Because clearly this is not a Merlin, is it?
It certainly isn't. It's a website built on WordPress and built by KOA and contractors, and it's written in all the normal language that their website is built in. But it has a module which can reach out to the Merlin server, which is at our hosted facility in Massachusetts, and it allows users of the KOA press room to search for photos in many of the same ways that they could if they had the Merlin system directly, that they were talking directly to the Merlin system. So, for example, could we type dog perhaps into the quick search box there?
We can do that.
And click on photos and search, and very quickly you'll see that the photos have been found within Merlin and presented inside the KOA website.
So these thumbnails are actually not on the KOA website. They're being pulled from Merlin, correct?
That's correct.
And same thing with the metadata that's below them?
Also correct. So this is quite a powerful method. You have the ability to filter what people can see. You can limit what search results will be returned, in other words,
so
by a couple of different methods.
So in the background,
so they don't need to expose all of your assets to the people using the press room website in a case like this.
So in the background, for example, even though I searched dog, it's probably also searching for approved dog photos rather than all dog photos, for example, as part of the search that's built into it.
That's correct.
Okay. And so what we're looking at now, this is a large thumbnail. This would also have been pulled from Merlin, I'm guessing.
That's right.
Okay.
All of these assets are actually in Merlin. They're not on the KOA site.
So far, which API have we using so far? This
is all OpenSearch.
Okay, but what happens when I click download?
When you click download, that uses a link that was embedded in the OpenSearch XML result to download using the SODA API.
Okay.
And again, you can restrict items so that users can only download the items with the characteristics you designate. So you could configure it, for example, so that they could see photos from a particular source, but not download them.
Okay. And Merlin, of course, is keeping track of these downloads as well. So that would be available to us in our Merlin reports.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. That's awesome. So shall we move on to the next one, Humane Society of the United States? So again, this is the Humane Society's newsroom. And so this is, you see all of their most recent news. Here you can see news for August 16th and going back a few days, also for August 16th, rescuing animals impacted by Louisiana flooding. I should mention to everybody that's on the call that Andrew basically has been involved with all of these use cases that we've described so far. So the API experts at the Humane Society or at KOA or at Make-A-Wish Foundation, which we'll show you in a moment, have been able to work with our API experts to basically make sure that the two systems are able to talk to each other. So I'm going to just go ahead and click on this this particular news item, rescuing animals impacted by Louisiana flooding. We probably have all seen something on the news about the people being displaced in Louisiana with the flooding. And here's the news release about what's happening with animals there. And there's a link here for media downloads. And clicking the media download link pops up another window. And what we're looking at is content in Merlin. Is that correct, Andrew?
That's right. So all of this metadata and the thumbnails are again in Merlin, and you have the option of downloading them again using the SODA interface.
And one of the things that the Humane Society has done is they've put a door in front of this. So they'll let you browse through the items as I'm doing right now. And so I can see the items that are part of this particular news event. But in order to download a photo, I actually have to be provided with a login. And so I can actually sign up for an account and it will go to someone at the Humane Society. Now, this is all the Humane Society programming, not Merlin programming. But what they've done here is they've allowed you to browse their content without a login. But when it's time to actually download something, the Humane Society wants to track you a little bit better and they want to know exactly who you are. And so this is their mechanism for doing that. So that's a little bit about these two use cases. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to our slideshow. We'll go to the next slide. And I want to talk about what Andrew and Make-A-Wish Foundation did. So the Make-A-Wish Foundation, they're based in Phoenix, as it says here. They've got 62 chapters, and the way they work, it's a federated system. So not only is each chapter their own separate 501c3, they also think they have their own Merlin system. And so unless they want to share content with one another. And so there are two services that the national office provides to all of its chapters. And one is Merlin, and the other one is this print collateral portal, which they call Design Studio. And so the Design Studio allows people to order, basically to create and order collateral, whether it's printed collateral like brochures or newsletters or things like that, or web pages that they can use. And so let's go to the next page. And so this is a little bit about what Design Studio does. So each chapter has their access to their own portion of it. There are templates available, pre-built templates for all of these different types of design work. And when they load images onto this design work, the content actually is coming from their Merlin system. And they've set up some filters to ensure that pictures are at least 3,000 pixels across to be passed through to Design Studio to ensure the printed collateral has enough resolution. And also a filter that allows for exceptions. So things like chapter logos and other types of logos may be smaller than that 300 pixel requirement. So this is something, again, that is set up on the Merlin side. And let me show you what it looks like. I don't have live access to Design Studio, but I can show you what it looks like. So again, this is a third-party application built by a company called Blue Sky. And so they worked with their developers, again, worked with our developers, Andrew in particular, to create this ability to create, this is a Twitter post, but basically to create third-party collateral. And then when you're ready to place content on your third-party collateral, whether it is approved logos or photos or things like that, the image library is actually pulling content from Merlin. So the image library doesn't live on the Blue Sky system. It is, again, approved content in Merlin. So people can search for content using the interface inside of the Blue Sky Design Studio, or they can, and basically that's what they can do, is search for content inside of Merlin and place approved content and place it on their Blue Sky collateral. So that's a little bit about that.
And I should add that we did a little bit of extension of the OpenSearch for the for this application, because our OpenSearch implementation is extensible and using a plugin mechanism, and we used that so that the content management system, the Design Studio system, could could tell us what user was logging in and which group they belong to, and that allowed us to make filters that would allow users to see the things for their chapter as well as the things that are designated to be available for everyone, but would hide from them things that belonged to other chapters. So we have a great deal of flexibility in how we can make this work for users, and to keep permissions clear across different kinds of users.
So if you have ideas, and you're thinking about how Merlin might integrate with systems that you're already running, please contact us. We'll make sure that you get in touch with the right folks, and we can talk about what you need to do. So Andrew, there's a third type of APIs that we haven't had a chance to talk about, the MX or Merlin X APIs. What can you tell us about that?
Okay, this is the killer application, as they say. Merlin X, I think many of you are already familiar with Merlin X as a web-based, the next generation web-based interface to Merlin. It's a fully functional DAM interface. It's used in publishing, electronic and otherwise, and it's a very slick, new, quick, I don't know what generation we're up to now, but it's really the latest generation of application for the web. And it is based on hosting an API on the server side, and most of the application itself then resides inside the browser. It's written in JavaScript and HTML and CSS. And the result of that is that we have a very powerful API on the server that can be used by other programs as well, and we have a customer who is already using the API that Merlin X presents, as well as our own applications that are using the same API but are implemented in JavaScript.
So why don't we? Most of you are probably familiar with what I'm about to show you. It's the Merlin X web interface. Okay, most of the people on this call are probably familiar with this because we show it once a month on these calls and doing other things. But this is our latest web client. So I think what I can take away from what you said is this application that we're looking at on the screen was primarily built using the APIs that we wrote. Is that about right?
That's correct. It uses for downloads, but I hope you can still hear me. The server application is all based on the Merlin X API.
Okay.
And when you log into Merlin X, the JavaScript, the browser downloads the JavaScript of the application and executes it, and then the JavaScript talks to the Merlin X API. Okay. It's a very efficient way to get an expressive application and to have a lot of the management of the application happen inside the browser, and the API is available for other applications to use. So it's not a RESTful API because the complexity of the user interface and the amount of information we need to keep in order to maintain a user's session state has to stay on the server. And so it's not RESTful, but it's all JSON back and forth, rather than XML. And it's very complete and it's extremely well documented. David's showing you a screen grab now of an excerpted part of documentation of the API. Is when you have this, and when you've bought the rights to use the API for your own applications, it comes with a manual, an electronic manual, to guide you through all of the different capabilities of the API. But it also has this web interface, which is on the server that you are using to do the development. This would be on your Merlin server. Every method, every portion of the API is self-documenting. And in fact, as you see here, there's a try it block on the screen that shows example parameters. You actually have the ability to paste in JSON to format the request, and click a try button and see the results come back as JSON. So it's an API that comes with its own documentation and its own test and debugging platform to make it easier to program against.
So while it would probably take a lot of effort, and I think we've got a really, really great web client, somebody could use the APIs if they had access to them, and use the tool set there to basically build their own version of a web client to access a Merlin database.
Well, that would be probably an extreme version. Yes,
Yes,
it's
but
possible
yeah,
in principle to
yes.
do that. Uh, the more usual case would be, for example, you have a workflow in which you have, pick an example, you have a color correction process that you use for items that are going to be published. You could have an external application that would be able to do versioning on the object, find the object that you want, check it out, download it, do the color processing, upload it again, and check it back in again. So you have complete access to the version control, the upload, the download, and editing of metadata this
Okay.
way. It doesn't have to be a user interface that uses this. It could be some part of your internal workflow.
And we have one of our customers that's actually updating metadata on specified PDF files by way of this API and a little script that they wrote. So they've got additional metadata that they want to add to PDFs that are already in Merlin, and they're using the APIs to do that function.
That's right. And they managed to do that before the side documentation on what everything was called happened. Actually, they had this documentation available, and they were able to write their application based on that.
Okay, so we're getting close to the point where we answer questions, and I see I've got one question up already from Nicole, and she's wanting to know if there's a mobile application for Merlin X, and the answer is no, there is not a mobile application. However, the Merlin X interface has been written in such a way that it is web friendly, so you can use your mobile devices, whether it's a phone or a tablet, and Merlin will scale itself appropriately depending upon the device that you're using with a streamed down, a streamlined feature set. So currently you can search Merlin, you can browse Merlin, you can upload to Merlin. You can view metadata, you can upload and add metadata as part of the upload process, all using our browser interface. So that's the answer to that one. Let me go
It
back.
does look very much like a web app, a mobile application, I have to say.
It,
It happens to be hosted in the browser, but in effect, it is a
it does.
mobile version of Merlin X.
So this is the time where we take your questions. If anybody else has any other questions, this would be a great time to ask them. Again, related specifically to our API integration with Merlin or anything else that's on your mind. Okay, not seeing and because I can't hear questions, but not seeing any questions. If you do come up with questions, please feel free to send them to me or Randy. If we don't know the answers, we certainly know where to get them. Next month, we're going to talk about authentication and Merlin X. This has been a topic that's been coming up a lot lately as people want to take advantage of new technologies. And so we're going to talk about using Active Directory. We're going to talk about using SAML. We're going to talk about local authentication. And we're going to talk about how all those things might work together for you to create a great way to control who's accessing your Merlin and from where. All right. So we're 5 minutes early, so I hope you can take advantage of that 5 minutes I'm giving back to you for today. Let us know if you've got questions. We will post the recording up on our YouTube page and send out invitations to next month's meeting. So everybody, thank you very much and happy Wednesday.
Thank you.
And thank you, Andrew.